and I'm joined by Prem Sikka. How are you doing, Prem?
Good morning, Crispin, and good morning, everyone else out there. Lovely to connect with all of you.
Now we've got a paper that you've just launched. We're launching this morning on how to fix the cost of living crisis and the energy bills crisis. Rescue Britain is pushing this out to everywhere we can today. This has been something that you've been working on for several weeks, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I've been looking at this because I'm not really persuaded by the narrative which is being offered that it is really just an energy price crisis. Of course it is, but there's a broader background to this, which is really a crisis of poverty, inequality, politics, governance, government, lack of democracy, and nobody seems to care for the ordinary person. So it's really a much, much bigger crisis manifesting itself through the energy price crisis.
Yeah, and the thing about this is we're just coming up to the conference season, and some of the ideas that you've put forward in your paper are groundbreaking and not represented at all by the main party. So it's a very good time to put this out there on this Thursday morning. It's a bit chilly, but this has warmed me up to read it, and the amount of detail that you've put into this paper is incredible. I did study at university, but some of the stuff you've done is the references, everything. It's so well done, and it's watertight. And it's also not what you'd expect from a kind of pamphleteer. It's actually very well researched and academic. And I'm going to, in the next hour, we're going to go through the paper. I'll just point out things that I picked out from the paper and ask you to comment on them. The front page of the paper is very simple. This is the title: Energy Price and Cost of Living Crisis. Crisis of poverty, inequality, democracy, and failed economic policies, and that's what you get from this. And you do a good front page of it to describe what's going to be in the paper. Now, one of the surprising parts of the paper that took me back a bit was you put a quote in from Adam Smith, who we wouldn't associate with the kind of economics that you speak of, but he says here, no society can surely be flourishing and happy of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. Do you think that the state of the country in terms of the poverty that people are facing at the moment is enough to shake the Conservatives as much as the Labour Party and the left and anyone who's got a conscience? Do you think the Conservatives are starting to feel a conscience on this?
Absolutely not. They're just talking about the wealth sort of gushing up, not really down. But the point about Adam Smith, just to come back, Crispin, is Adam Smith was a moral philosopher. And first, economist second. And if you read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, he talks about active state intervention to reduce inequalities. All that is kind of left out. And the Tories and the others have latched onto this thing called invisible hand in Adam Smith's writing, which is only 6 lines in the whole works. It's just a kind of a throwaway thing because it suits them. He was actually talking about how people can have good life. And he saw an active role for the state in reducing poverty, providing education, providing infrastructure, all these things. So I could have easily referred to Karl Marx, and that would have really perhaps annoyed some neoliberals, but we really want to carry everyone with us. Hence, my reference to Adam Smith.
Right.
But it really boils down to the same thing. Conservatives are not going to do anything. If Labour is going to do something, it will have to radically change its policies. For example, when Keir Starmer became leader, he said he believed in public ownership of essential industries, and then under corporate pressure, he's kind of walked away from that. And as we go through the paper, I will show you that we can't resolve the energy price issue, especially by just running with privatization. And other countries are recognizing that. As we know, in France, EDF is now under 100% state control. Germany's just yesterday nationalized its main gas importer. And we are just sitting on the sidelines, letting corporations profiteer. So that is really the fundamental issue here.
Right. And I'd just like to let people know, if they've got any questions or want to make any points at the end of this, please put your hand up and I'll come to you. So the start of your paper is about the situation facing us. And you've written in there that, by winter 2022, some 45 million Britons were expected to be in fuel poverty, increasing the potential for bad debts. The situation before the winter is pretty bad anyway, because I had no idea that already 3.4 million gas and electricity accounts were in debt. What do you think the government's new that statement yesterday, do you think that will make any difference to that situation?
No, I mean, yesterday the government primarily talked about supporting businesses, though that may be welcome. It's not really enough. 6 months doesn't give you any certainty. But when you come to the households, I refer to the phrase fuel poverty. What that means is 10% of more of your income is used up to pay for fuel. In many cases, it is far more. I know pensioners who are paying already over a third of their pension to meet the fuel bills. But the government knew about this. Government wasn't really bothered. What really pushed it to act is the fact that the likelihood of higher bad debts for energy companies would mean the wholesalers don't get paid, transmission companies and generators don't get paid, oil and gas companies don't get paid. So if you got 45 million people in fuel poverty, and even if they default by £1,000 or £1,500 each, you can imagine the level of bad debts for the energy sector. The whole sector becomes unviable. So that has really what forced government to act. The fact that the energy companies' survival was endangered. If they were really concerned about protecting the people, they could have easily increased pensions, benefits, abandoned austerity, increased public sector wages. They were not really interested in that. The key thing for them was saving the energy sector and its profits, because even with this proposed ceiling, or the ceiling that now announced, average kind of household bill of 2,500, they are not curbing corporate profiteering in any way whatsoever. You and I might pay 2,500, and if the tariff is 3,500 or just over it, the difference between 2,500 and the off-gem tariff is paid by the government. So energy company profits are actually guaranteed. They will have their bad debts would be drastically reduced, and even more ironical, that we, the taxpayers, will be paying the energy companies' own energy bills because of the way the government is implementing the support for businesses. That's the ultimate irony, and they will not even pay a windfall tax. So it's really the threat of bad debts and threatening the energy company profits, which has really forced the government to move, not people's plight.
Right. I mean, the next aspect of your paper that I wanted to cover was this question of the Ukraine war. I mean, Liz Truss is saying we all have to tighten our belts to help the Ukrainians, and that's what this is all about. In your paper, you mentioned that the UK government blames the Russia-Ukraine war for the current energy price hikes, but you also suggest that this is overblown. I mean, and the German Chancellor put it, some energy companies are simply using the fact that the high price of gas determines the price of electricity and are therefore making a lot of money. Can you, what's your how would you see the war in Ukraine affecting the price here? What kind of impact has it had, if you had to sum it up?
I think obviously it's affected the markets, but if we look at the UK, the cost of extracting oil, gas from North Sea has not changed. That supply has not changed. So what these companies are doing is riding on back of the international market price to make extra profits. So we are subsidizing oil and gas companies in this country, despite their high levels of profits. And, then they are skinning the customers as well. So obviously there is an impact of the Russian-Ukraine war, but it is not as much. It is far more on Germany than, let us say, on the UK. But in the UK, the price of energy is higher than it is in Germany, mainly because of profiteering. Yeah.
I mean, what you mentioned with the North Sea oil, I have to say that's something that really struck me from the paper. What you found with the North Sea oil, the misuse of revenues that's been going on since it was discovered, effectively. I mean, even when the UK won nature's lottery in the form of oil and gas reserves, the government gave it all away to corporations and thus lost the possibilities of making interventions to protect people and businesses from pricing hikes. The comparison that is made in the paper is with Norway, and it's just incredible the different approach that Norway made, with over 50% of production coming through Statoil, which the state owns a majority, and state ownership of assets via the state direct financial interest. And then you look at the result of this, which is that by 2014, the UK generated 470 billion in revenue, while Norway has generated 1,000. Is that 1 trillion? Over a trillion since 1971 in real terms. I mean, and Norway now has a sovereign fund of 1.2 trillion to enable it to manage any economic crisis, while the UK has squandered its oil and gas wealth at the altar of privatization. It's just incredible how damaging privatization of oil was from Margaret Thatcher. I mean, Norway, Norway seems to be doing quite well just by being quite balanced about it, doesn't it?
Well, that's right. I think we were lied to and are still being lied to by governments who claim that if you had oil, gas, or any other industry under public ownership, that somehow dissuades companies from investing. That's simply not the case in Norway. Private sector have been very happy to invest. Norwegians, right from the beginning, levied not only corporation tax, but an additional 56% tax on the production of oil and gas. And that is how they built up their sovereign fund. Here, the idea was you hand it to corporations, it will somehow, the wealth will trickle down, and which is what they are still talking about. It never ever has trickled down, and many oil and gas companies are actually also very big tax dodgers in the UK. They simply, shift their income abroad. So that is a big mistake. But more importantly, the more the governments have privatized, especially the UK, they have had fewer levers to influence the direction of the economy. And we are witnessing that now. At some stage, they're going to bite the bullet and say, like the French and the Germans, okay, we're going to eliminate this level of profiteering, we are going to nationalize. But at the moment, there is no sign, and I can't imagine trust government actually doing the decent thing. So the pressure for that will have to come from the people, just like when people said, we are not going to pay high energy bills. That added to the pressure on energy companies to say, oh my God, there's a problem of liquidity for us. How on earth are we going to pay the wholesalers, the generators, the transmitters, the providers of raw materials? And that is what forced the government to act. So we need to generate the pressure for the government to do the decent thing.
Right. The other thing about the paper, but with the North Sea oil and stuff, the BP, this BP speculation was something I had no idea of. This is about the windfall tax, and you say it's poorly designed. And you say the government announced a windfall tax of 25% on North Sea profits of oil and gas companies to raise 5 billion for the year beginning 26th of May 2022. And then you've put here, energy companies have been running a racket for years. They speculate on oil and gas prices to push them up. BP alone employs more than 3,000 traders to do that, and is estimated to generate 2 to 3 billion pounds profit from such speculation. That's criminal, isn't it?
Yes, it's rigging the market. So they get the raw material out of the North Sea or anywhere else, and then the same company employs traders to bid for it. It's a bit like you having a house and then saying, well, I'll now bid for it, and hoping that the others around you then panic and they will bid even higher if they want the house. In this case, people have no choice. We all need energy. You have to bid for it. So they push up the price, they make profit. And the way the UK government designed this windfall tax earlier this year, it did not cover those profits. We also know refiners' profit margins have been incredibly high. That was not subject to the windfall tax the government introduced in May this year. On top of that, the petrol price was shooting up, and many of the petrol stations are run by oil companies like Shell, BP, Gulf, and others. That profit was not subject to the windfall tax. They only subjected the North Sea oil gas production to windfall tax, from which they said they would raise 5 billion, and then promptly promised to hand it back to the oil companies by saying, if you invest £100 on something, we will give you £91 back. And that subsidy, that handback, was not available to the producers of renewable energy, only to what we call fossil fuels. So they basically handed it all back. It was sleight of hands, really. It was a con trick. And those companies were laughing their head off, and I did some calculation, and I worked out that 5 billion, even if they paid it in full without handing anything back, the impact on them would be less than 2% of their earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, which is absolutely tiny.
I mean, did you have experience in your past working life of any of these companies and how they work with trading and manipulating the prices of their shares?
Well, funny enough, I used to be an accountant for a major oil company. I won't advertise the name here. So I know something about how these things work. I know how they also shift profits. And, so this is a normal practice. And anyone who knows about the industry knows that this is how the market is manipulated. It's the same in energy. When the government privatized energy, they said they were going to separate generation of energy from distribution and retail. So what do we have now? We have EDF owns nuclear reactors, and it is also a retailer. E.ON owns power stations and is also a retailer. So basically, the idea that you could separate these things, that hasn't happened, has never really happened. And what that then means is that the producers are able to control all stages of production and distribution and basically earn monopoly rents. And that is why we need a windfall tax, and we also really need a much higher level of taxes on these companies. But really, we could eliminate that layer of profiteering altogether by bringing them under public ownership.
Yeah, and you've got an illustration here of something that's, you say the market relating to energy has three broad stages. These are production, transmission, and distribution. In the UK, each stage is controlled by profit-seeking corporations. The regulatory system guarantees profits for participants of all three stages. So it's not, when we talk about the energy companies, we're talking about many different aspects of that, getting it to us. I mean, how much money are they taking out on each one? It's incredible that we're allowing them to take money from each stage before we even get it, and then the prices are so high, and they're saying, well, it's because of Ukraine. It's just bizarre, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we used to have 12 regional boards, which people living in the southeast probably remember the London Electricity Board and so on. They really provided the retail. They've been now replaced by Ovo, Octopus, and many others. Then we had the National Grid. National Grid is now privatized. So you find your transmission distribution of electricity is controlled by just 6 companies. Just 4 companies control the gas distribution, and their average profit margin is 40% plus. Now, all that layer of profit for likes of Ovo, Octopus, and others, these distribution companies, was not there before privatization. We did not have to bear any of that cost. So now their profits are basically our cost. And so we are really being exploited. So these companies are making record profits, and you can't have competition in the energy industry. It is impossible, because nobody is going to lay down parallel pipes to deliver gas to your home. Nobody is going to build parallel generating stations, cables, transmission systems to your homes. So we are actually captive customers. We have to pay, and you can't do without energy, whether you're at home or in business. So whatever price they charge, you have to actually pay. And as I explain in the paper, that the pricing itself of energy is fundamentally flawed, because Ofgem at one level is supposed to be protecting the consumers. At another level, it is guaranteeing a corporate profits. You can't reconcile the two. Okay, it is impossible. They refer to the phrase energy market. As I just explained, a market is not possible. In markets, you can have many buyers and sellers. There are many buyers, but not many sellers here. You can't have competition. We have captive customers. And then let me tell everyone how Ofgem works out the tariff price. So take electricity as an example. It is produced from gas, oil, wind, solar power, biomass, hydro, many other sources. When we flick on our electricity switch, we get electricity. We have no idea what the source is. Electricity produced from one source is as good as any other. So the cheapest form of electricity is from renewables, solar, wind, etc. The dearest is from gas. So if Ofgem now works out a tariff price based on, let us say, solar or wind, that means people like providing electricity through nuclear, oil, gas can't make profit. On the other hand, if Ofgem fixes it at the highest price of the input, which at the moment is gas, then everybody's making excess profits. So that is what Ofgem does. It is fixing profit on the basis of the cost of the highest element, the most pricey element. And then to make it even worse, in April this year, the rules have been even more rigged in the favor of companies. So if somebody offers you a cheaper tariff, let us say you find one, which is impossible at the moment, then the new provider of your electricity has to compensate the expensive supplier you're leaving by up to 85% of the difference between the tariffs. So what that means is the most incompetent, most inefficient supplier is guaranteed profits. That is no indicator of market. In market, generally, if you're buying a mobile phone, I happen to have one here alongside me. Somebody, you can find two mobile phones, one costs more than the other, you simply don't buy it. The inefficient producer is driven out of business. Here, there is no choice. And the regulator is colluding with in the system. So we even had a minister who was instrumental to designing this. His name is, he's an MP, his last name is Penrose, and he recently said in the paper, well, this off-gem tariff is not really fit for purpose. The thing is, it has never been fit for purpose from day one, because this was the formula they applied, what they call marginal cost, based it on the highest cost of providing electricity. It is just that most of us never noticed it because we didn't think the impact on us was that great. And now it is so stark that we can just see it. So off-gem is unfit for purpose. Well, its formula is unfit for purpose.
I mean, I took a lot out of the paper on off-gem, but it's a lot on off-gem in the paper. I mean, I'll show some of it. In its keenness to make the energy market work, off-gem failed to carry out due diligence checks on new retailers. Many had low equity base, high leverage, did not hedge any future wholesale price increases. And then if you look at the story of Bulb, I mean, this one was just crazy. Bulb was formed in 2014 with share capital of only £100. By August 2016, it amassed losses of 763,000. By March 2017, the accumulated losses increased to 2.7 million. The fact that then Bulb has been bailed out by the government at an estimated cost of 4 billion. I mean, off-gem, like you say, it just is not fit for purpose, and this isn't being reported on the media at all. They're entertaining everything that off-gem says.
Well, I mean, some of the so-called energy retail companies are no more than two people with a laptop in their kitchen. And Bulb Energy directly employed only two people who were its directors. Then it had a parent company called Simple Energy, which had more employees. So presumably they were sharing some of the work and the inquiries. But the problem is, these companies are highly leveraged. So Bulb started with £54 million bank loan. And what a crazy bank. You've got £100 equity and you borrow £54 million. Presumably somebody thought there's an opportunity to make a quick killing. And these companies are now paying interest on this loan, and Bulb was not alone. All the others are doing it too. With higher interest rates, that means their interest outgoings are higher. And at the same time, customers are unable to pay. So what's the government doing? Handing them £40 billion in liquidity support, which is absolutely crazy. So not only 150 billion to bail out the energy company, give them another 40 billion on top of that to say, now you bail yourself out. So basically, I just had a quick look. I'm an accountant by training, and I looked at Bulb's accounts, and I said, clearly off-gem has absolutely no understanding of the financial aspects whatsoever. I wouldn't have lent this company £1,000, never mind £54 million. So lack of shareholders' funds, equity base meant that it had really no capacity to absorb any market volatility. And of course, Bulb is not alone. There are 31 other companies who have gone bust. So what happens is, when a company goes bust, you can then transfer to another retailer, assuming that they want to take you on. Others looked at Bulb's contracts and they said, no, thank you, we don't want to take it on. So the government is actually bailing it out with £4 billion. They're not buying it. They're just, running down the contracts which it entered into at the cost of £4 billion. And there are other related issues. So the total cost eventually may be about £7 billion, and that is over £233 per customer, which will be loaded onto us, either through our bills or through our taxes. Okay, so we are paying. So again, before privatization, this layer was not there. There would not have been this cost. And the other thing is, most energy companies want you to pay a month in advance. That means you often have a credit balance with them. That under Ofgem's rules, they are not required to ring fence the credit balances. So when a company goes bust, there's a scramble to pay the people who are owed credit balances, and that is recovered via a levy on all of us. All of us are paying a levy to return to people their credit balances. And that money is basically squandered on the high executive pay, dividends and profiteering and everything else. So again, in a publicly owned system, that layer would not be there. So again, we are being hit by a privatized system at every level, and it is pushing up all our costs in a huge way.
Well, we've got this one struck me, obviously, the electricity and gas distribution companies have the highest profit margins of any UK industry at 42.5% and 40.5% respectively. They make a combined 6.3 billion profit that is just not being put out there at all. No one is saying that. I mean, it's a conspiracy, surely, just to keep that quiet. I mean, Ofgem should be saying this is terrible, but they don't seem to be saying anything about that.
No, Ofgem is highly conflicted. I mean, the thing is, the numbers I are given you are, I think, from a report by Unite, the trade union. They done the background research. I often talk about private equity, who are the asset strippers, and how much money they are making. The profit margins of the electricity and gas distributors are even higher than private equity. That tells you something about the organized looting that is going on. Okay, so again, that £6 billion odd, that would be either used for investment in the system or reducing our bills in a publicly owned system. That layer was not there before privatization. So all kind of layers have been imposed because of privatization. And not really surprisingly, we have the second most expensive electricity in Europe. Czech Republic is just slightly above us.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to show that slide. I'll show it now. Actually, if you look at this is household electricity prices in European capitals. As you say, Czech Republic is only slightly ahead of the UK, and you can see Norway down the bottom there. Interestingly, the gas price is key to that, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gas price is a key because a lot of our electricity is produced from gas. But what happened was we had considerable gas storage capacity, which offered us some kind of a hedge. And when British Gas was privatized, they decided that the storage facilities should also be privatized, and the government had agreed to subsidize the repair and maintenance of those facilities. In 2017, British Gas's new owners decided that they don't want to pay for the repair and maintenance. They really want more public money. The government refused, so the storage facilities were shut down. So we have a very, very small storage facility compared to many other countries. I asked about that in the House of Lords just before we broke up a couple of weeks ago, and the government didn't really give me a decent answer. My question was, what cost-benefit analysis did they actually do to say we are not going to pay for this? They could have simply ratcheted up the tax rate for the energy companies in order to maintain those energy supplies. The basic logic of the government is what they call the just-in-time systems, which means you get your deliveries just in time before you use them, and that kind of minimizes the inventory or the stock or the storage costs. I used to teach that stuff as an accounting academic, and my question always used to be to the students, never mind the just in time, what about just in case? What about if there is an emergency, if there's a problem, what you going to do?
Yeah.
And that clearly did not enter the government's thinking, and the government claims that it asked some think tanks to look into this. Well, I'm afraid if you pay a think tank to give you the answer you want, that is the answer you get. So these think tanks they hire are not necessarily independent.
Well, look, I'm just going to. There's one thing I'll talk about a bit before we go into what your ideas for how we fix the situation. There's this great part of the paper where you talk about how the interests of capital in some way and the energy companies have got a whole lot of people working to help them keep it as it is. Poverty and inequality cannot be changed by taking back control of the legislative and regulative frameworks and reconstruction of the state. Global capitalism has subverted democratic processes and captured the state through funding of political parties, legislators and think tanks, control of media, ideological wars, bribes, threats, and more. The UK state has become the ultimate guarantor of corporate profits to the detriment of the people. All this has been part of the right-wing coup, which began in the 1970s and is now culminating in the loss of human rights, welfare rights, public services, and disposable income, all sacrificed at the altar of wealth accumulation by the few. The left needs to develop tools and strategies for reconstruction of the state and common sense of the people. And in some ways, just talking to you now, it is part of that process. We've got to get the ideas out there in ways that people can understand, because they do bamboozle us with the people they have representing them. You say, like, in all kinds of areas, politics, think tanks, media, telling us what the truth is, and it's not the truth. So yeah, I mean, it is a really difficult task to change the way things are, but I think what you've written there is fantastic. The paper is fantastic because it makes it all very clear how we got to where we are, and then you talk very clearly about how we can get out of this situation. And your first concern is the real poverty that people are facing. And you've written that we should increase the value of state pension benefits and wages at least in line with inflation. A minimum living wage of £15 per hour is needed. End employee insecurity. You mentioned how the attacks on the unions have led to low living standards, and also the pension is far too low as well. So yeah, I mean, you're not just saying that we need to nationalize or privatize or bring into public ownership energy. You're sort of saying there's urgent things that need to be done right now, don't you?
Yes, I think really point I was making earlier that it is really part of a broader crisis about poverty, inequality that has been waged upon the people for over 40 years. And it is really that what needs to be addressed. You know, I mentioned in the paper that in 1976, when we had a heavier member of trade unions, the workers' share of the GDP in the form of wages and salaries was about 65.1%. It is now around about 50%. And obviously there are relatively few members of trade unions compared to 1976. So the two seem to run in sort of parallel. And we can't increase workers' share of the GDP without an engagement with capital. So the question is, who's benefited from that decline in the workers' share of GDP? You will find in the paper there is data about how much the state has taken in the form of taxes. And incredibly, it is stable, around about 32, 33% of GDP, slightly higher in conservative years than in Labour years, despite what the Conservatives tell you. So what that means is that capital has directly benefited from the decline in Labour's share of the GDP, and that needs to be reversed. And strengthening trade unions, workers' rights, minimum wage is part of that equation. Obviously not the ultimate answer, because ultimately within capitalism, you can't resolve these kind of contradictions. But there is something, you can still do. And hence some of those starting suggestions, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's other ones that believe labour shortages by providing affordable childcare, social security support, must not condemn people to extreme levels of poverty, and capital's share of GDP must be reduced. There's a lot of points that you make about how things have to be changed immediately, but that when it comes to the idea of taxation, that's when you are in your element, isn't it? Because you have very good many ideas about taxation that aren't put forward by anyone. I mean, I tried to put them into slides, but there's so many, they're so detailed. But some of the ideas about taxation are just not mentioned at all, as we said about other things. I mean, this is just 5 of them: taxing capital gains at the same rate as earned income, and charging national insurance on it, raised around 25 billion a year, taxing dividends at the same rates as applicable to earning. Another 8 billion or more could be added, and national insurance. And then you've got another list here of the wealth tax. There's a possible wealth tax, a tax on private schools, on sugar and salt content in food, zero carbon campaign, inequality tax. I don't think you're suggesting all those taxes at once, but what you're saying is there's plenty of ways to raise revenue that have not been gone into at all. We haven't tried these at all, and the potential's there for raising lots of money without hurting the people who are poorest.
Well, not one of those suggestions is about increasing the basic rate of income tax or the 40% rate of income tax, or increasing national insurance for the masses. It is all about addressing anomalies and eliminating tax perks for the few. So the capital gains you mentioned, capital gains around about 70 billion pounds, which are lightly taxed, are mainly by people in the London and Southeast area, and affects altogether through the country about 250,000 people, not 45 million who are going to be condemned to fuel poverty if nothing was done. But I'm also suggesting that we look at tax in a different way, because the neoliberal narrative is that the taxes pay for things. Now, I did a quick search on history. I could not find any year in British history when taxes ex ante funded anything. So when we created the National Health Service, fought the Second World War, fought the Falkland War, bailed out banks in the mid-1970s, bailed out the banks in 2007-8, dealt with COVID, and nobody said, oh, you haven't got tax revenues, you can't do these things. So in other words, governments created money, okay? And taxes were a way of removing some of that money from the economy, because it either was considered to be inflationary or led to grotesque inequalities. So whereas the neoliberals are telling us that taxes pay for things, I can't find any evidence that they actually did. So from that, it follows that the state can reshape society. If it wants new hospitals, if it wants new schools, new care homes, it can create money. It has done that. For example, £895 billion of quantitative easing has been handed out to speculators since the banking crash. Okay, so it can create any kind of money to achieve whatever it wants, and then say, okay, folks, because that expenditure is creating, let us say, inflation or grotesque inequalities, now we need to remove some of that money from circulation, and then it can target those who are enjoying the benefit of capital gains, those who are receiving dividends at low tax, those who are making financial gains but not paying any tax on it. So let us have a financial transaction tax. So I am trying to debunk the idea that tax is the key to prosperity. That has never been the case. Can't find a single year when ex ante that actually happened. So as, if you like, as people who want to see emancipatory change, one thing we must do is debunk neoliberal logics and say, well, where is the evidence? There is no evidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's spread. So the propaganda about neoliberalism is so it's contaminated everything to the point that it's very difficult to see what you're saying as viable. People say that it's not, you can't do that, but it makes perfect sense. And I'd just like to say, you know, there is this point about how can we afford public ownership? It's wasting money and stuff. I mean, you've written quite a clear point here that the government is already bailing out bulb energy. It could formally bring it into public ownership and through it offer low profit energy to consumers. This will immediately bring other retailers into line, and those who don't will be pushed out of the market. That seems like a very clear strategy that won't cost nearly as much as anyone's suggesting. It won't cost anything really. Is that something that needs to be put out there more as well about the cost of public ownership?
I think we certainly need to challenge the idea that, oh, it is too expensive. So when we're looking at the retailers of energy, you mentioned over octopus, bulb, there's virtually no cost. The government can turn around, bring bulb into, as you said, into public ownership, and then bulb offers a low profit, if you like, tariffs. That reduces the cost. And the other thing is, even if the government does not want to do that, it can create a state-owned not-for-profit company to say, okay, this will now compete with the rest of you and see if you want to remain in business. So that wouldn't really cost us anything either. And it can say, okay, well, in 6 months' time, this not-for-profit company will come into existence. All the others who have entered into expensive hedges, now's your chance, your time to, you know, let those hedges come to maturity. And after that, either you compete or you're out. So that wouldn't really cost us anything. But really, we need to remove that layer altogether. That's why I was saying before privatization, we had 12 regional companies or 12 regional boards which offered the retail. And if, you know, they couldn't really go bust because they were state-owned. So you didn't have any of this profiteering element. You didn't have this 7 billion we are spending on dealing with the fallout from bulb and related companies. That wasn't there. So that is one part which is easily privatized, and there are other parts. Yeah.
Well, look, we're kind of coming to the end of the hour, and there's people who have their hands up. So I'm going to bring some in. Jenny Manson has put her hand up. I'm not sure if she's around. Jenny, are you there?
Sorry, I'm mute, Jenny.
Oh, and I think I muted her by mistake. Jenny, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Do you want to speak to Prem?
Yes, I did. Hello, Prem.
Got a point to make?
Hi, Jenny.
Nice to see you. Two questions. One about today and one in the past. What impact is what you're working on having on the current Labour shadow cabinet? Are they using your papers? Secondly, as you know, I was an oil tax inspector. and perhaps I was naive, but in the 90s, I think we did quite a good job on the oil companies. I dealt with Shell at one stage. Why was, sorry, it's rather technical for other people, but was PRT abolished for false reasons? The reason they said they were going to abolish petroleum revenue tax, which brought in a lot of money, was because losses were going to get so great as the oil companies came, exhausted some of the oil platforms and wells. Was that a con? So those are the two questions.
Well, thank you, Jenny. Lovely to see you and to speak with you again. I have no idea what the shadow cabinet is up to. My ideas, papers are in public circulation. I have had a meeting yesterday with a number of Labour backbench MPs, I won't name anybody, and also backbench Labour peers. We discussed some of these issues, went through my paper, and hopefully some of these would be aired at various points in debates, not only inside but also outside Parliament. But I think the ultimate change isn't going to come from Parliament. We need to mobilize the state, but the pressure for that has to come from outside. Within Parliament, just look at the register of members' interests and see how many MPs are on the books of corporations doing their bidding, and how much money they are making from second, third, and God knows how many other jobs. And it is the same in the Lords. There are people bidding, lobbying for particular industries and interests. I have refused so far to take on any corporate directorship. I can tell you I have had many offers since I've been in the Lords for the last 2 years. I don't need them. I'm not interested. I'm more interested in how everyone can have a good life and live a fulfilling life. That is what I'm really concerned about. And part of that is really encouraging a revolution of human consciousness, so that we can, together find better answers. Now, as regards the oil company, all kind of pups were sold to us as the governments privatized not only the North Sea oil and gas. Many would recall that BP itself was publicly owned once upon a time, and it was sold off by Thatcher on the basis that somehow all this would be some kind of an economic nirvana, giving us lower costs and better services. Now we know that simply is not true at all. So it is really part of the politics, and it is the same now that today telling us, oh, well, the bankers' bonuses have to be increased because that would somehow lead to higher investment, for heaven's sake. Even when the UK, while we were in the EU, we were third from bottom in terms of investment in productive assets for years and years, but there was no cap on bankers' bonuses. What did that give us? A banking crash. So the idea, it is all wrapped up. But I think what I would say to everybody is, you don't have to run with my ideas either. What I would say, look, let us think about things and then, respond, okay? Because it is easy to hear something and run with it, but reflect upon it and then decide, what do we want to do? But my hope is that through collective discussions, we can find better answers. No one person has the answer to all the problems that we are facing, but through discussion, hopefully we get a better understanding and can find alternatives, which hopefully are better than status quo.
Well, I've got a few more questions. At what time can we try and wrap it up by?
Well, I'm happy to take it as long as you want to.
Okay. Well, look, Steve Freeman.
Thank you, Prem. That's great work, and I look forward to reading the paper. And also, thank you, Crispin, for putting on this session. Very interesting session. And I suppose I've got 2 points I want to make. One is economic, from what you said, and one is political. The most obvious one is that I can say His Majesty's government, be that Liz Truss or Keir Starmer, is not going to solve this problem. I had to hesitate when I go his, because I automatically want to go Her Majesty's government, but we've got to kind of adjust to the completely new position that we're in. But anyway, I think there's nothing wrong with rescuing Adam Smith from the Tories and the neoliberals, because Smith was anti-monopoly. You know, his idea was that in the 18th century, by the way, that the market seemed to be the solution to the state monopolies that are run by the aristocracy for the aristocracy. But today we're living in an epoch of monopoly capital. It doesn't matter what there is no free market. It's an impossible thing. If you turn 2 businesses into 100 businesses by breaking them up today, by tomorrow there'd be 100. They'd still be back to 2 again. You know, or in a year's time or 2 years time. And regulation is there because the market doesn't work. But what we've got the regulation of monopoly, by monopoly, for monopoly, as you've outlined, you know, to paraphrase another phrase about republicanism, which I like to go for, of the people, by the people, etc. So we've got regulatory capture. So regulation, calling on the regulators to do more is kind of a utopian idea. So my political point is about democracy. You know, the problem is not public ownership or what you've outlined as a program. It's the means of achieving it. How are we going to get there? We could win a war as we did in 1945, and then we'll have a radicalized working class and all the soldiers who've been trained to use weapons coming back to the country, and then we get a radical government. We could lose a war like Russia did in 1917 or Germany in 1918, and that could cause the radicalization. But if we're not looking for war to get us to where we want to be, we have to take up the argument of democracy. Really, we have to have a democratic system to deliver the kind of economics that you're talking about. A completely new democratic political system, and I'll use the word republic for that. And we have to win mass support for that. And the left has never taken up democratic Republican arguments at all. There's a complete absence, especially in England, of any Republican culture. And even if you say, let's do it outside Parliament, and I agree with what you said, I think that means creating our own kind of republic before we have a republic. You know, it has to be created by the people themselves before we actually get to that point. And my last point, my very last point, just to Crispin, I think what we have to think of in terms is not rescuing Britain, really, Crispin. We have to rescue England from Britain, because in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there's a completely different perspective on where they're going. So if it was rescue England, I'd like it a lot better. But anyway, finish there.
Okay, let's give a quick response. I'll be fairly quick. Yes, we do have a crisis of democracy, which is what my paper says, that is how we really got to understand this. And in the paper, which hopefully Crispin will tell you where to download it from shortly, I do talk about how we're going to change corporate governance, have workers on board as a way of influencing distribution of income and control of corporations, as a way of having consumers. Look, we all buy gas, electricity, water. Companies know with certainty who the consumers are. They know our names, know our addresses. So even if they have a qualification, specified a qualification criteria like you got to be a customer for a year, after a year, we can nominate somebody to sit on the board. We can vote on executive pay. And if we don't like the way they're ripping us off, we kick out the executives. And indeed, I did a very lengthy paper for Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell when they were leading the Labour Party, where those proposals were actually made. And some elements of that were in the 2017 and 2019 manifesto as well. So that is a way of enhancing democracy, if you like, saying let representatives of workers, consumers, be present on companies where they can be identified with certainty. It can't always work with every industry, but with some like banks, water companies, gas, electricity, railways, possibly as well, if you're a season ticket holder and so on, you know, these things can work. So we need to democratize. Other European countries have workers on board. Most European countries do. Their world hasn't actually collapsed. They seem to have a better standard of living. Their inequalities don't seem to be as deep as ours. Of course, they are still mired in the contradictions of capitalism, but that's another issue for another day.
All right. Thank you, Prem. Thank you, Steve. Helen put her hand up. Helen?
Well, thank you, Crispin, and thank you for putting this on. And Prem, thank you so much. I'm utterly inspired. I think this could be a watershed moment, because I've been thinking of the last few days that we've got to get energy, the whole energy sector, put into public hands. And your paper has got the evidence, it's put it all together. And I really do think that this can be done. I think, as you say, we've got to put the pressure on the government to do the right thing. I've just written down what you said, Prem, and this is the way to do it. So if we get all the current wonderful campaigning groups that are going on everywhere, People's Assembly, Enough is Enough, Peace and Justice Project, trades councils, the TUC have even called to nationalise energy sector, the TUC of all bodies. So it's really, I think you've lit a touch paper here, Prem, I really do. And I think we need to send, each of our MPs needs to be sent a copy of your report, and we need to just get it out there far and wide. And, you know, and be positive about this. It's all right, we've had the most 10 days of just having everything rammed down our throats, but the more they're feeling our pressure, the more authoritarian they are getting. So we must not let that put us off. I think we've got to literally take this and run with it. And I think you're so modest, Prem. It's not ideas, it's evidence that you're giving us here. And this is what we need, hard evidence that can't be argued with. And everybody wants this. It's not like it's something that's, well, okay, we've got an opinion on this. Every single person wants their energy bills to go back to where they were 2 years ago, and everybody will be just, I think it's wonderful. I'm sorry to go on, but we've got to get all the groups on board. It's not just belonging to one group. This is what's happening at the moment. People are saying, oh, well, that's our idea, we're doing that. No, we've all got to get behind this, and we can win it. This government are weak. They fold as soon as there's public pressure, they fold. We've had hundreds of U-turns, and Truss is she's no different from the rest. So I think we've got to take it and run with it. Thank you so much, Prem. I've followed you for a long time on Twitter, and I think you're wonderful. And Crispin, thank you.
Well, thank you, Helena. Just a quick sort of a response. Let me just explain, how do we nationalize energy companies? I'll refer to the retailers, but behind that there is the distributors, National Grid. You can even go back to the likes of BP and Shell. Now, as I said earlier, government does not need to borrow money. Government creates money. And what's the point of handing it to banks and then saying, give us back and we'll give you 5%? that is just guaranteeing their profit. So governments can create money. That's become manifestly clear with 895 billion of quantitative easing handed out to speculators. So government can say, okay, let us imagine a arm of energy industry will cost 100 billion, let us say, to nationalize. You can create that 100 billion, you can buy it out. On your balance sheet, you will have assets on one side, liability on the other. So the net effect of the government wealth is actually zero. It is just that the neoliberals emphasize the liability side and say, oh my God, you know, where are you going to get that 100 billion from? Okay. Now, if you created that money, as I said earlier, and if you find as a result of that, because the economy is running, let us say, at full throttle, and it is inflationary, or it is creating too many inequalities, then you can withdraw some of that money. You don't need to fiddle with the interest rates. We can do that because we have a major global currency. US can do that, European Union can do that. Other countries can't easily do that because their currencies are not that strong. So we can actually do that. Then the neoliberals tell us, oh, no, that is unacceptable. The government must borrow. In the paper, I provide a quote from Jacob Rees-Mogg. I don't know if you, Crispin didn't emphasize that earlier, which he put out, which he said in a Sky News interview. He was basically saying that quantitative easing does not add to debt. Okay, that is it. Okay. So basically, Jacob Rees-Mogg, in order to ensure that Liz Truss hands out billions in tax cuts, he's basically saying, oh, well, you know, quantitative easing doesn't really add to government borrowing. Oh, you say, well, wonderful. Thank you, Jacob. Now we can do that for everything else we want. And even if the government has to borrow, let us go down to the neoliberal logic. Let's say the government has to borrow 100 billion to nationalize part of it. You can issue people's bonds. You don't even have to go to the banks, and people are getting miserable rates of interest. You can say, okay, we can give you, something a little more. Let the people own it in that way. That way you wipe out the shareholders, and many of these companies are paying interest anyway, because they are heavily leveraged. That can then go to the people. So in a sense, the cost is very little, if any.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point. Thank you for your contribution, and thank you for coming on. And Rona, how you doing, Rona?
Yeah, hiya, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much
Hiya.
to everyone involved. Always a pleasure to listen to Prem Sikka. And you know, when you talk, Prem, you really help make it understandable for people who don't come from your background in accountancy. So I don't think I've understood it all brilliantly, but I've got some take-home points, which is fantastic, isn't it? If I could ask a couple of questions about the model and the Rescue Britain approach, and these questions may sound critical, and I hope, I don't come across as being critical of your thesis here. I think what you're doing is remarkable. But I suppose I've been thinking over the summer quite a bit about degrowth or post-growth. And so one of the concerns or questions I had listening to your presentation was about the huge amounts of energy, time and resources that are deployed in trying to alter a system that works brilliantly well for a tiny handful of greedy capitalists. And I'm wondering whether that energy, time and resource for you, people like you, Prem, and for grassroots activists on the ground would be better invested in thinking about a degrowth approach to capitalism or neoliberalism, and whether we are reaching, because of the intersection of these crises and the climate crises as well, whether we are reaching that point where it's not really about, imposing a left-wing or radical progressive politics here. It's become an urgent necessity to think about degrowth and move away from this obsession with GDP and endless growth that the planet just can't sustain. So that's the question, and I'm asking that hopefully in a very respectful way, Prem. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Rona. Please never ever be afraid to be critical. Nobody should be put on a pedestal. And that is why we are in a mess, because we put not only ideas of people's on pedestals and then saying, oh my God, we can't critique it. So feel free to critique, and which is very different from criticism. But yes, I mean, I think really when people focus on GDP and growth, what they neglect is equitable distribution of income and wealth. And that is what we need to see. And that is direct opposite to what Liz Truss was saying. Oh, well, we said we can't look at everything from the lens of redistribution. Well, my response is go and talk to somebody. I wrote an article in Left Foot Forward a couple of weeks ago after I visited a number of pawnbrokers. I just stood out there waiting to talk to people who are going in and out. And there are people bringing vacuum cleaners, microwave ovens, radios, televisions, electric drills. And one lady even brought a toaster. She was hoping to get some money to buy a birthday card and a present for somebody with that. And so in a sense, when you see that, you can see redistribution matters, and that, all wealth is generated by collaborative efforts of all stakeholders. But at the moment, most of it is appropriated by providers of finance capital and executives, and that is wrong. And even the wiser souls know that unless people have money to spend, you can't have a thriving economy. Crispin attended a seminar organized in the House of Lords with patriotic millionaires. You remember Crispin a few weeks ago. And they were some of the richest people, millionaires, as the name suggests. And what was their basic message? Please tax us more, because inequality and poverty is destroying society. So what is the government going to do tomorrow? Give them more money. And they said, we don't want it. We don't need it. Okay. And then you have the right wing saying we're going to totally abolish taxes. There's some even saying that in the media. You know, what, you're going to have a bucket at the airport and say, kindly pay your taxes before you leave the country and that will sort it out? No. As regards growth, you know, I think growth has its limits, and we need to recognize that. So I favor redistribution. I think we are a rich country. Nobody should be poor in this country.
Okay, thank you, Mona. And Lizzie's on the line. Lizzie, are you able to?
Hiya.
Hiya.
Have you got?
Hiya.
Oh, you've got your. Hiya, Lizzie.
Yeah, I've put it on specially for you. Right, I wanted to talk a little bit. Everything that Prem says is just spot on, and it's what many of us have known for many years, but also it's useful for the people that have never considered why we are in the state we are in. This is why, because of the piracy committed on us. As it has in the past on other countries, you know, like we've robbed other countries for centuries, and now they're robbing us, the actual people of Great Britain. But mind you, that's been going on for a long time too. Right, so grassroots organizations, what we should be doing, these benevolent millionaires should be doing, is things like organizing community workers, businesses, small companies, to build fireplaces again, to open up fireplaces, install Argas or some sort of thing that you can cook on. Take us out of the need, there's such a need for electricity and gas. So a wood store, communal wood store to supply those fireplaces. Supply brushes and dustpans so you don't have to use your Hoover. What about, you know, supplying all sorts of things that can take us off of the electricity and gas grids? And that, if we all did that until next March, I know it's difficult over the winter, but hey, in where I live, we've already done that. We've all, unluckily, some people don't have chimneys built in their houses, but we do. And everybody, even the rather rich people, have all opened up their chimneys again. So they can afford to pay for that, but most people can't afford to pay for that, and they can't afford to install any cooking appliances in their fireplaces, such as wood burners. So if we could do that communally for people who can't afford to, and then just get us off of the grid. Thank you.
What's your view on that, Prem?
Well, thanks, Lizzie. You talked about piracy. I suppose we haven't got privatization, we got piratization. Maybe that's the phrase we should be using. I think what we are now witnessing in terms of robbing, you know, you said, I think East India companies coming home, and we can see that with the government putting in free ports, government heading for charter cities where your local community will effectively be controlled by a corporation, where you will have different environmental standards, labor standards, and labor law standards, and so on. As regards coming off the grid, well, I suppose there are many possibilities, but let's see what else develops.
Right, well, we're sort of running quite long over, so if we keep points quite short here, Arthur.
Hi
How you
there,
doing?
Crispin. Thanks.
Good to see
Thanks for letting me talk. And thanks to Prem. That's a really good presentation. This kind of seems to me to be a companion piece to the show you did on Sunday when we talked about all the very various different groups that are looking to address the situation. And it seems to me that this document could be the foundation for, if you like, and you know I'm a big fan of the Chartists, a new charter, really, to formulate demands that all those different groups could sign up to, and without having to rearrange their organization or without pinning all our hopes on a political party. I know we're thinking of Labour Party, but just say, all right, these are the demands of the people. This is our charter. This is what we want. If you, as a prospective candidate, support those, we'll vote for you. If not, we won't. You know, we'll even organize against you. And I think this is a way, you know, because there are two problems. Is it what do we want and how do we look to achieve it? And I think this is a good way of tying the two things up. We have, if you like, in a way, Prem's document is kind of like a manifesto. So I would suggest we turn that into a charter and go to all these groups and say, what do you reckon? Why don't, you know, we don't need to, it's something that we can all coalesce around. That's all I wanted to say.
Great. I think it's a great point. Great point. I think, I mean, I think that the detail in the paper is just so, it's so thorough that nobody can dispute it, and even like people who we don't even think of in our circle would find it hard to dispute what Prem's written. But if we can use what Prem's suggesting as action points, they are what we need right now. I mean, people talk about the 2017 manifesto, but that is 5 years ago, and we are in a different situation now. We have to refer to where we are now, not just to where we were with Jeremy Corbyn as a leader. Do you agree? Do you agree with that, Prem? That people do kind of say we should use the 2017 manifesto, but maybe we need to rethink it a bit because of what's been happening.
I think we always need to rethink things, but that thinking itself has to be grounded in some value system. The value system we are looking for, as I always say, is for everyone to be able to live a fulfilling life, not just a handful of people, everyone. As I said, we may now be the 6th largest economy, but comparatively, we are still a very, very rich country. And we should not have to wait 2 weeks to see a GP. You should not have 6.8 million waiting for hospital appointment in England. You should not have people dying of cold and hunger. You should not have, people who are homeless. You should not have, we have 41% of the claimants of universal credit are at work. You should not have a situation where work does not pay enough. And so we got to address to these fundamental issues. Of course, the details can vary, policies can vary, but I think it's the main goal, we got to be focused on.
Yeah, well, that's great. We've got 2 more points here. Readervan, are you there? Readervan.
Yes, Crispin. Thank you very much, and
good to see you.
Thank you to our brother Prem for being a voice for integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue, even though he's embedded in the system. Our task is how do we connect, as the one brother said, what happens on a Sunday, which happens also with Red TV, to get the left. The intellectual argument has been made. You cannot, the argument our brother Prem had made is unimpeachable. I'm not saying that he is the gospel, but it is unimpeachable. The question is, how do we shut down the country? Because the system is completely captured by corporations. The government is captured. The Labour Party is begging to be pumped out. There are very few people like our brother Prem and Jeremy Corbyn, who is on the margins because he's honest and decent. And the question for the left is, we behave as if we've got forever to do something. We have to find ways to shut the country down with mass civil disobedience. And guess what? When I'm speaking like this, I'm speaking like I am someone with dual nationality. My citizenship, because I talk this language, can be cancelled.
Right.
But guess what? I don't care. Because we have to shut the country down. The Tory government is not interested in serving other than the national interest, which is the corporations. The Labour Party is begging for parity to be pumped out. And the question for us on the left is, we know the arguments. We've got people like our brother Prem, and he's not the only one, who give us the way ahead. They are candles flickering in the dark night. We know what the issues are. What are we going to do? Because having more discussions, of course, as a Marxist, you would say, without good theory, you can't have good practice. The question is, when do we shut this country down? And when do we clog up the criminal justice system? When they charge us and we go to prison, but we keep our back straight because we've got no other option. Our backs are to the wall because this winter, in a few weeks, people are going to die every day. What more do we want? Thank you. And Crispin, you're a force for good, my brother.
Well, thank you very much. You're pretty amazing. Thank you. Now, Prem, do you want to? I mean,
I recommend everyone to read E.P. Thompson's Making of the English Working Class, and let us remember, against all the odds, our predecessors have secured many rights, whether it's right to have a trade union, right to have a vote, and many other things. And they secured it by mobilizing people at the grassroots level, using resources, whether it was music, songs, theater, plays, oratory, leaflets, alternative media like one we are on now. So there are many, many, many resources, but we do need political leadership in this and to bring people together. Now, who provides that? That is an open question. Are trade unions going to provide it at the moment? Possibly. Is Labour going to provide it? We heard already some considerable doubts about that, but we do need, we need to bring it all together, not just once for all, because what happened is when working people won some rights, they thought the war was over. The right was always busy. Neoliberal state does not give you rights. It makes concessions. Concession means they can be withdrawn, and they are now being withdrawn because the working class has been suppressed, and that is why we are losing our rights. So in a sense, we live in a very dangerous world. It is a dangerous place. You have to be constantly you have to be vigilant, and you have to constantly be organized. Maybe let's look at the French. They don't easily concede anything. They do fight back. They did fight the government and force Macron to consider reducing the state pension age from 65 to 62. Here we are heading to 67, and Ian Duncan Smith talking about 75. That means nobody will be alive really to collect their state pension. That is the way they will resolve that financial crisis. So what I'm saying is we need political leadership. We need organizing from grassroots upwards. That is the only way you will get durable change. You will not get it top down, and so far it has failed.
Okay, thank you, Prem. And Sherwin Smith in my constituency. How you doing, Sherwin?
I get by, thank you. Thanks for asking. Prem, I have not been happy with two things that you've done. One, you've made no mention of relative populations. For instance, Norway has only one person for every 15 in the UK. And the other thing was your confidence in printing money. Yes, governments can print money. And yes, we've got a better chance than, for instance, Zimbabwe, to get away with printing money, but people have to believe in money. And when they cease to believe in money, all hell breaks loose.
I think there are excellent points you make there, Sherwin. So thank you very much for those. Yes, Norway has a smaller population, but I'm not sure that per se necessarily gives it any advantage. If you look at even a country like China or India, which are growing now at very, very fast rates, it is primarily led by state investment. So state has to play a key role in investment in productive assets. And that is where the state has withdrawn here. It has been handing everything to the private sector and playing very little role in that. Second, about printing money. Yes, printing money can be destructive, but in this case, we are not talking about physically printing money. These days, they're just computer entries. This is why I said, if creation of this money is found to be inflationary or creating inequalities, then you remove it. Okay, so the government created £895 billion of quantitative easing. Currently, the public debt is about £2.4 trillion. That is, if you like, another form of money creation. But it hasn't really thought about removing anything from those who have been the prime beneficiaries. So what I am saying is, we create money to create, to have the kind of society we want. You can't wait for tax revenues to come in and say, now we will build hospitals after we get the revenue. You decide that in advance, that we will build new hospitals, new schools, new power stations, whatever we want to do. And then say, okay, now, if that has a negative effect, we will remove some of that cash from circulation without enriching the bankers. And so I have a remedy, if you like. I do recognize the point you're making, that printing money can have negative consequences. But I am saying we are also able to remove some of it from circulation. So obviously there has to be a relationship between money in circulation and the economy's productive capacities.
Does that answer your question, Sherwin?
For the moment, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And finally, you may not know Gerald Tosker, Prem, but he is actually a legend on this on the Zoom. That he sometimes comes back 3 times with more points, but it's only one point, isn't it, Gerald?
It's just one main point, yeah. Thank you very much, and just want to say a first point, which is what a great show, and thank you so much for putting this forward. It's absolutely brilliant, and I totally agree with what Prem is saying, and I very much appreciate it. What I wanted to say is this: I do like what everyone has said in fact, and particularly I'd like what Arthur said about the Chartists, and we've got so many groups outside at the moment fighting for various causes, pushing for enough is enough as the main example, and the biggest group now, I think. The thing is, at some point, all these groups need to come together, and I think we all, at some point, the working classes, or the worker classes, I should say, the people need to have a political voice. And if we're going to rescue Britain, something that actually Rescue Britain have put forward these ideas since its outset. That if we're going to rescue Britain, we do need to have a political voice. And so some kind of charter, it's not a bad idea. And but at the end of the day, we need to pull all these people together so that we can build this political voice. And whether we involve Labour with that or anybody else, I don't know. But I don't really have much faith in them at the moment. But together, I think we can do that. And I'm interested in ways to go about pulling everyone together and building that political voice and moving forward with the ideals that certainly Rescue Britain and many other left-wing organisations, apart from them, have put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I mean, Prem, just to finish now. I mean, you've gone over the time very much, but the conferences are coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we're not going to hear the solution that you've put forward, and it will probably be ignored what you've said by those main parties. Do you think Labour can really change at all on this?
I think Labour has the capacity to change. Indeed, if you look at historical developments, it is the party which gave us the National Health Service, the welfare state, racial equality laws, gender equality laws, minimum wage, many other things. The more of a question is whether the current leadership is in tune with the historical legacy. And that is a highly problematical issue. Within Labour Party, there are elements who want to transform the system. You know, some people say to me, why don't you leave the Labour Party? My argument is, sorry, I'm in tune with this historical mission. It is those who don't want to continue with that. The other ones, they should be leaving, rather than those of us who want to, continue with that sort of a transformative agenda, which is what it always had. So I think that itself poses bigger questions about how political parties are funded, what do legislators do, how representative parliament is of people. I'm in the Lords, and I look forward to having a day when I can vote it out of existence and have it replaced by an elected body. I do hope I get a chance if somebody gives me that chance. And right. I said that openly, many times in the media as well. So I'm saying there are a whole range of questions. But whatever change that is going to be secured, pressure has to be from grassroots. It is not going to come from top down. That has not happened in British history. It's not going to happen. And it is us, the people, who have the ultimate power, only if we can organize and coalesce around some issues. And I don't think there is a bigger issue than ensuring that every one of us has a God-given right to live a fulfilling life. There is no exception to it. There's nothing else. I've never ever met a child who did not want the parents or grandparents to have a decent home, decent food, decent living standard, pension, did not want to breathe clean air. But once they grow up, it is pumped into their heads that somehow shareholders matter, corporations matter, everything has to have a price tag on it. So it is something we are doing to people as they grow up. We need to reflect on our own values and see, why are we doing this to people? Why are we turning these caring children into these kind of people, who are counting the money and nothing else?